Hi, so with Alpha having been open, should we say, for about a week, where people have been in and allowed to stream it and do commentary on it, what are most people really looking for when they're trying to find stuff on the Alpha? They're just trying to find out how things are going to work. How are things going to be when this goes live? This is totally the wrong way of looking at things, because no one has any idea how this thing is going to be when it goes live. Even the Blizzard developers themselves, they're still working on it. What should be most important, what should be absolutely critical, is not what you can find out from Blizzard, but what Blizzard can find out from you. Feedback is ultra important, and it's ultra important right at the start of this open testing. In a very weird way, it's always arse about face, because what actually usually happens is the majority of people don't provide their feedback until they experience it themselves. By then it's too late. And that doesn't matter whether it's when they start opening up the servers to loads and loads of beta invites. The problem is when they start doing that, that means they've done everything, they've got all their feedback. They're just stress testing at that point. As soon as they open the floodgates, that's stress testing. Sure, there's going to be a few tweaks still going on with other stuff, but they're mostly hardware testing at that point. When it goes live, same thing. Some things, okay, can be changed throughout an expansion. Some things are fairly set in stone. They won't bother changing until the next expansion. So the time that coincides with the majority of feedback is when it's too late. So you need to be doing it early. So just to give a few examples of how effective feedback can be, because I always say with feedback, it's one of those things, it's a bit like voting. If you don't vote in an election, you don't really get a say in complaining about whoever gets elected. It's the same thing here. If you don't post your feedback, don't really get to complain about what comes after it. And some people will say, well, you know, the feedback doesn't make any difference though, you never read it, stuff like that. Well, they do read it. And okay, sure, your one post isn't going to make a whole lot of difference. Just to give you some examples. Now, in the Legion Alpha, where I was in quite early on, for Retribution Paladin specifically, I play Ret Paladin. There were about 5 things I took issue with. You know, overall it was all right, but there were 5 things I took issue with. One of them was actually dealt with before it went live. It was actually changed. The other 4 of them went live. But I've been since justified on all 4 of them because they're going to be removed. Some of them already have one, or at least one, or one was pretty quickly after launch. It was the sort of thing that for over half a year I'd been saying can't possibly work. Got all the way through to launch. Lo and behold, didn't work properly, didn't do anything any good, and it was removed. So what was the one thing that was changed, and what were some of the things that weren't? I'm not going to go into the Ret specific details because this is for everyone. There was one of the things was Ret Paladins were the only melee not to have a baseline movement speed ability. Could have a talent, but there was no baseline movement speed ability. And the thing is that lots and lots of people were saying that all the way through. The feedback was constantly coming in. We should have this baseline, we should have this baseline. Before it went live, Blizzard put it in baseline. The other things, people weren't really bringing it up a lot. It wasn't brought up in the feedback. And a lot of people just didn't care enough to feedback about it, or they didn't see the problem with it, or I wasn't able to convince people the problem with it. Made no difference, you know. I could have been coming up with really, really strong arguments. Makes no difference. I'm just one person. Maybe a few people agreed with me. That's just a handful of people. And that's the thing. You know, if one person posts some feedback and it's really detailed and logical and backed up by evidence, fantastic. Does it make any difference? No. It's one person. Whereas someone writes a couple of lines and a load of people agree, all of a sudden that's feedback that goes somewhere. Up here you can see a good example. This is from the Shenzhen mount, the doggy mount, which we didn't think we were going to be getting, but we're going to get in. It's on the online store, you know. And it was changed. It was made smaller. And there was a lot of discussion on Reddit. And a lot of people were saying, this thing is too small. Instant feedback. Community manager going, yeah, we agree. We saw this on Reddit. We've passed this on. And they made a change. The change didn't work out, so they reverted it. But they're going to work on it. That is something that is going to be actively worked on. Because a lot of people have asked for it. Not one person presenting a well thought out argument, but lots and lots of people saying, this isn't good enough. And it's the same thing here. The extreme example, I'll give you the extreme example because that's an arts team issue. You might argue, well, maybe the art team are more open to that sort of feedback. So from a development point of view, in Warlords of Draenor, you got all the way to level cap. Didn't get flying. We'd always had flying at level cap. What's going on? For every expansion, as soon as you get to level cap, you can get flying. No flying. What's happening, Blizzard? Blizzard responded, oh yeah, flying's gone. It's gone from the game. It's really bad. Now, I actually agreed with them on that one. I agree that flying should never have been brought in. But I also understand that once you've let the genie out of the bottle, people come to expect it. They're not going to let that go. The result, massive amounts of feedback. And not small pockets of feedback like you might get for an individual class or spec. Because this affected everyone. En masse, loads of feedback going, no, we want flying. Flying now. To which Blizzard responded a few days later after saying there's not going to be any flying in the game ever again. Not just no flying now, not just no flying this expansion, no flying in the game ever again. 3 days later, okay, so there's going to be flying, so we're going to do it like this instead, you know, blah, 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 compromise. And it was as simple as that. So this is what needs to happen now in terms of how you prepare the feedback. So how can you, as an individual, make some use out of this? Because as I say, making the well thought out post is really important, but it's one thought out post, doesn't matter how brilliant it is never going to go anywhere. And there's a couple of reasons potentially for this. It's not to knock your argument. Think about it from Blizzard's point of view. First of all, anything that makes it to the files that can be either data mined or actually played in the PTR or the alpha beta, whatever it is, has already gone through discussions. Lots of people who know a lot about the game because they're developers have had discussions. There would have been disagreements as well. You know, very few of these decisions, I imagine, are unanimous. So there would have been disagreements. Eventually, an accord would have been reached or a decision would have been made by someone senior. Or this is what we're going to do. So it's been through the discussion process. So they're not necessarily all that keen to continue the discussion process because from their point of view, it's already been done. And lots of very clever arguments on both sides have been presented and they've decided on this. And you can sort of see that in the feedback from a development point of view. Very often, if you look at a response from a developer point of view, it's not really the sort of response that you would make if you were taking part in a discussion. It's much more a response justifying the decision that's been made. And you know, you see that. Sometimes you get a bit of a hint that maybe the person responding didn't agree with it themselves, because sometimes they'll just go into a full-on justification. Sometimes you'll see the phrase, it was thought best, or this was thought best, or it was felt that, you know, in other words, distancing themselves from the decision because maybe they don't agree with it, but they're towing the party line because that was the decision that was made. We all have to do that sometime or other in our lives. So it may be that as well. The other part of it is, of course, Blizzard get attacked for so many things, sometimes fairly, sometimes unfairly. From their point of view, it's probably very difficult to tell which are the genuinely felt criticisms and which are just people trolling the hell out of them because, you know, whine. Just like there was a post on the forums just today or something, or yesterday, with someone going, oh, I quit this game, don't bring out Classic WoW, make WoW like Classic. The usual stuff, off in a huff. You know, they get plenty of that, I imagine. And so that's not terribly constructive, and it's not even really criticism. So that may already put them in a very defensive mood. Imagine it like this. If you're constantly being criticised every day, hundreds of times a day, maybe you'd be a bit defensive. So there's that as well. So what do I think is the best way to present this feedback? And you know, I'm not being a hypocrite here. I am actually going to post some feedback myself, but I'm sort of trying to think about the best way to do it because I think everyone should do that as well. First of all, where to do it. Now, as is noted here, you know, Blizzard employees do read Blizzard discussions elsewhere. Reddit, MMO Champion, Wowhead, you know, yada, yada, yada. They're even in your Discords listening in. Sometimes openly, sometimes not so much. So they do that. But that's not the best place to put it. The best place to put it, of course, is where they're guaranteed to read it, and that is the official forums or tweeting at, well, Warcraft devs. But I would say the official forums is best. Reason. Even on the EU ones. Reason is this. The other thing is, don't write it as if you're writing to Blizzard. I think that's terrible feedback. And the reason is this. Because even if it's really well constructed, a really good argument, you're one person. You need to be hundreds of people. You ideally need 1,000 people agreeing with you. So how do you do that? You don't write it as if it's to Blizzard. You write it to players. You know, you're writing the thing as if you want to start a discussion with players, because that's what you actually want to do. Blizzard are not going to take any notice of one post that few people read and no one responds to. But they are going to take notice of a post that has so many respondents that they have to extend the limit of the post to allow it to continue. So write it to other players, encourage other players to have a discussion, make it open-ended, don't say this is how it must be. Present your arguments, let other people discuss. If people disagree with you, don't jump straight on them, you know, have an actual discussion. Encourage other people to take part in it as well. You know, people who might not normally take part in a discussion, if you know them in the game, get them to go on and put their responses on as well. If you see a post you agree with, upvote it. Upvote it. Something as simple as that. You don't even have to, if you don't want to respond on forums yourself, go through and the ones you agree with, upvote them. Engage in that way. That's by far the best thing to do, because as has been shown, if enough people present feedback, it at the very least gets Blizzard to genuinely reconsider. Not just say, oh, we'll take it into account. They actually will if there's enough people doing it, because it's numbers that's going to make the difference here. So yeah, when it comes to feedback, don't dissociate yourself from it. And, you know, some examples recently, for example, I'm not going to bring this up too much, because again, it's another one where I'm sort of on Blizzard's side, so I'm loath to sort of suggest that people counter this. But, you know, the Zandalari Paladins, apparently a load of Horde want Zandalari Paladins. I sort of don't blame them, because, you know, when I went Horde, there wasn't much choice. My choice was either to roll a Blood Elf or to have no dignity at all. There was no choice at all. So I can understand them wanting another choice. But the fact of the matter is, okay, so we've data mined that they're not going to be Paladins. Does that mean that they're not going to be Paladins? No. It doesn't. For a start, they're not even in the alpha yet. We'll just data mine this information. It may not be wholly accurate. It looks like it probably is, but it's not guaranteed to be. And the other thing is, even if it is, Blizzard can change their mind. They've changed their mind on several things during the alpha, the Legion alpha, because enough people post that feedback. If enough people post that feedback, they'll change their minds on that. Or anything else, anything you want with your particular class or spec, or with anything else to do with the game. Post your feedback, encourage other people to do it. And do you know what? If you're in the minority and because of that they don't make the change, well, you're in the minority. Just have to accept that. But engage, because if you don't engage, then you don't get to whine about whatever comes. So hopefully that's given you some food for thought. Hopefully you'll be going onto the forums and actually posting your feedback, and do it on a regular basis. You know, I would say at least once a week, post some feedback on BFA, if indeed you might. I mean, some people will just take what comes there. They think it's fantastic, whatever comes. In fact, that's okay. That's great. But if ever, when an expansion launches, you think, oh, well, that was disappointing. I wish they hadn't done that. Or, because that's another thing, it's not just about adding in what you want. Bear this in mind. There will be some features of Legion that are going, some of which we know about, some of which we don't know about yet, but they will be. We just don't know what they are. If there's a feature you really enjoyed, you need to say that as well. Because if enough people sort of say, no, we really like that feature, Blizzard might be thinking, well, when people didn't seem to really like it, we'll get rid of it. They need to be going, oh, actually, people really did like it. Because they don't know if you don't tell them. So put that in as well. Put in what works well as what didn't. And what you'd like to see improved. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like, subscribe, share with other people who might be interested. Really important for feedback. And until next time, I'll see you later.